Hello everyone, welcome to the second spotlight in September. It comes every Sunday and it's a really big one today because we're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that you don't know about all of it, but I'm going to give you inside information of what we're actually doing. We're getting ready to increase the number of things we have in the vault. Now the vault is on FARSIGHT.org website, and the introduction section, you open that introduction section on the menu and you see at the bottom of that you'll see the vault. That's where we have transcripts of everything we've done, and so we have the transcripts of all of our mysteries projects and the transcripts of all of our ET board meetings and the transcripts of all of our conversations with Harvey, and now we're adding the transcripts of our deep news, all of our deep news things. Now this is what's so important. They're not up there yet, but they're done. But we're doing a little web work. Hopefully they'll be up in a day or two. So what the deep news is and what these transcripts are, they've been specially designed for all of our work to be ingestible or to be able to be ingested by and read by AIs. So you see, it's impossible for a human to do what I'm about to say. So it had to be done by AIs such as ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or whatever. The data that we have for our work are the words that we use in our sessions. The remote viewers do absolutely everything totally blind to the target. They don't know anything about the nature of the project, nothing about the target. They just know that if they don't do a session, they don't get paid. So they're blind to everything. So it's like a reporter assigned to cover a major thing that's happening, but the reporter doesn't know what that thing is. Like they're blindfolded until they get there, and then they open their eyes and they say, what? And they're just reporting what they see. Totally blind to what the meaning is. Normally in all mainstream news, the reporters know what it is, and the stations themselves, the broadcasters, have their own bias. And that bias filters everything that you get from that station. For example, there used to be two people who I really love to watch, Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave, on a YouTube news show called The Hill. And it was so great because Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave disagreed. She has a bachelor's from Harvard and a law degree from Harvard, and Robbie Suave comes at things from a libertarian point of view, and they used to go at each other and be really sort of interesting. But then there was some political stuff going on behind the scenes in The Hill, and she got forced out. Now that had to deal mostly with the Israeli-Gaza stuff that was going on, but there was the implication was that The Hill had sort of a viewpoint that they wanted to continue, and they didn't want anything to be sort of contrasting with that. If you look at CNN, for example, they're essentially a mouthpiece for the Democratic National Committee. They were the CNN were the ones who had done numerous hit pieces on people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Trump and things like that. They really are the spokesperson for the Democratic National Committee. That's how it looks. That's how it comes across. They're not unbiased. Fox News, on the other hand, is the spokesperson for the Republicans. So each news outlet has their own perspective, their own viewpoint. And I'm not saying one is good or one is bad. I'm just saying that you pick the news outlet and you'll be able to figure out what their orientation is. But basically the news anchors, or the people who are reporting the news, have a bias that corresponds with the bias of the news outlet. And so you don't get anything objective. And so you can't believe anything coming from the mainstream news. New York Times, I won't even go into that, but it's like, in my opinion, it's just like right off the scale crazy. So, and I used to love the New York Times way back when, and then in the 1970s and 80s, I used to think the New York Times was amazing, but like right now, whoa. Anyway, so when you have remote viewers going in and looking at something, it's totally unbiased because they don't know even what the target is. They're just reporting what they're seeing using the remote viewing procedures, of which they are the world's best in doing those procedures. And, they do it under really good conditions. So when you see our projects, you're getting raw data, but those data are in the form of words that they say. They write things down on their tablets, and then they present things on video. They're alone in the studio when they record their video, and that's it. Okay? And then after everything's done, we tell them what the target was, and you actually see their response when they're told what the target is, and they go, "What the huh? Are you serious?" You can actually see how legitimate the whole thing is. But the data collected blind, totally scientifically clean, are the words. The words. Now, it's absolutely impossible for a human being to go through every single word in all of those sessions and analyze them. It's impossible. I can't do it myself. Maybe I could do it for one project or two projects if I spent 4 years on each one. I mean, it's like counting up the words and figuring out the statistics associated with the concepts with the words. But AIs can do it. They're the only ones that can do it. So for those of you who are saying you wish we didn't have any AI stuff in what we do at Farsight, and we do read your comments, and sometimes people say that, we couldn't do what we're doing, period, if we didn't have the help of AIs. So we're talking ChatGPT, Gemini, things like that. So what we have done is made our transcripts ingestible by or readable by the AIs, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, okay? And then the AI can read it and sort it all out, do all the statistics, understand everything, and explain it to you. That's what we did it for. That's what's in the vault. Now, what's coming in the future at some point is when we have all of our mysteries projects, basically stuff scanning the entire solar system, the history of Earth, and the whole galaxy. We're going to be able to look in broad scale what a snapshot is of what the entire galaxy, solar system, Earth has been going through for the last, however long. I mean, that never could have been done before. We have way over 100 projects, and each one has a zillion words in it, and all those words have to be organized and... Okay. Well, the same is true of our deep news projects. Our deep news projects are about current events on Earth, right here. And so we do those on a rolling basis. Every month there's a deep news project, so every year we've got 12 of those things, and we go into all types of mysteries regarding what's going on in the news. With people, we do deep mind probes of the national leaders, we do everything, okay? All under totally blind conditions. Well, we've been doing this since 2023, so we have a lot of deep news stuff. And they have to be analyzed, the transcripts have to be analyzed by AI to be able to figure out what's going on. Well, sometimes we have so many deep news stuff that we sort of lose track. Like, we did that? And so in the process of getting our transcripts ready, the transcripts are ready, we're just getting them. They're actually ready and they're up on the web, but we haven't linked all the web pages, so that'll be a day or two before it happens. And they'll be available in the vault. So the transcripts, excuse me, the transcripts we were going through just yesterday. I had something I was planning on talking about today, which was something else. And then we came across a transcript for the project that we had, the Deep News projects for the U.S. military engagement in 2025, in late 2024 and 2025. That's like now. And I said, oh yeah, we did that. So then we did the transcripts, so we sent it up to our AI to look it over and go through the whole thing, and we said, whoa, our jaw dropped. My jaw dropped. I had to call up my son Aziz, and I said, Aziz, do you remember we did this? And we were talking about it, and it was like amazing. So these were sessions that were done in October 2024. Okay? And we published them in November 2024. And the whole idea of these sessions was to see if there was any type of U.S. military engagement going on in the United States, possibly as a result of the election, the 2024 election, which happened in November. Now, we got tons of stuff, and we didn't really quite understand the stuff, but we published it anyway. It's published, and you can all go to FarsightPrime.com. I think these are even available on YouTube. So, but you can all go to FarsightPrime.com. It's easy to find there in the Deep News series for 2024, and watch them. And we have a bunch of sessions there from our remote viewers, and it's amazing that what we see now happening on the streets in reality is exactly what's in those sessions, and it's matching so perfectly. We're assuming that what is in the sessions, still in the sessions, is still coming. So there's, it's just amazing. And I guess part of this was a result of us looking at the news with respect to Charlie Kirk, and we said well, things are really weird. Things are really getting out of control. This is crazy. It used to be in the old days that the liberal side of things was always in favor of gun control, and they always thought of the conservative side of things as being the ones who were dangerous because they're the ones that had the guns and things like that. Okay. And now it seems to have completely flipped, where the conservatives are the ones sort of holding the line, and the liberals seem to be the radicalized ones that are running around with guns and shooting people. Now, that's not true of all cases. It's just that it seems to have been a shift. There's a radicalization of the left that didn't used to be there 10, 20 years ago. And the conservative side of things seems to be dampening down. But now with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, looks like, this is so polarized that they could be ready for war. They could be ready for knock down, drag out both sides. So it used to be the left used to be the unarmed one, and the right used to be the armed one. Now both sides seem to be armed, and the left is no longer gun shy. They seem to have, and you have to understand, it's not everybody on the left or everybody on the right. It's just that there are radicalized people within both groups, and those people are the ones you have to be worried about. There's 300 million people in this country and in the United States, and all you need is a few radicalized ones to sort of do crazy stuff. But that can tip the whole country into pandemonium. And so on the right, on the conservative side, people are really worried about the safety of people like Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, people like that. Some people have stopped doing public addresses, going out and meeting, doing things like meeting people in public. It's becoming a situation in where notables are probably going to be moving almost entirely online and simply not having those type of mega rallies that Charlie Kirk was having when he was shot. So it's becoming sort of wild. I mean, wild. Then you get school shootings going on, and it's just crazy. So, I surf a lot. I surf a lot at the beach, a lot. Every single month I'm out there surfing, once a month at least. And I have learned a lot of lessons about life while surfing. That's right, while bobbing up and down, waiting for the waves and things like that. I've learned a lot of lessons about life. And I'm going to share with you one of the most important lessons that I have learned from surfing that has guided my understanding of life. Right now. You ready for it? You ready for it? This is it. There is always a next wave. That's right. There's always a next wave. It's not like you go out there and you're surfing and you say, okay, I'm going to surf until I catch the big one. Okay, then you catch the big one and then you're done. Okay, I caught it, that's it. Everybody can go home now. No. There's always a next wave. There's always another one. When you finish surfing for the day, you just have to stop. There's still going to be waves coming in. You're just stopping because you're gassed out, as my son says. So, you surf until you're gassed out. And then you just stop. Okay, and you go off and you get pizza. Okay, so there's always a next wave. So when you look at the stuff like just happened with school shootings, just happened with Charlie Kirk, and just happened with the stuff we're going to be going over, it's not ending. There's always a next wave. So these sessions are really good, not because everything in the sessions has already happened, but it gives you a window into what's coming, and there's always a next wave. So more is coming. So the worst mistake you can make is to say, okay, everything that's happened is it. It's over. It's done. That was terrible. No. There is always a next wave. All right, so let me talk to you about this. Now, this project that we did is actually the title of the spotlight today, which is the U.S. domestic military engagement after the election. Now, for this particular spotlight, we focused on 3 months: December 24, January 25, and February 25. But you have to understand about time with remote viewing. So I have to explain that. And we're going to start writing our targets differently because of the way this confuses so many people. So we're actually going to be making a change in how we write our targets rather than focusing on months. So, but first we asked our viewers, we had 4 viewers, we asked them to look at U.S. military domestic engagement inside the continental United States in the months immediately following the election, and that would be December, January, and February. But let me give you the snapshot of the thing that I'm going to talk to you about time, and then I'll explain it a little bit more. With remote viewing, dates should never be treated as rigid calendar markers. Now, so many people, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. Somebody will comment under one of our videos, oh, so this is the last day of the month and it didn't happen. Okay, the whole thing, Farsight's just junk, nothing's wrong. Okay, next, I'm unsubscribing. Goodbye. I mean, they're so stupid. It's not that they're stupid because they themselves are stupid, but they're saying something stupid because I haven't fully explained it. I've explained it many times, but in a way that is able to be grasped. And part of it is the way we write our targets, which has got to be changed so that that mistake doesn't happen. But for people to say something like that, oh, it hasn't happened, it's the last day of the month, you're all screwed up, that's wrong. That's not what actually happens. It's not all your fault that you do that. It's our fault for not explaining it in the target properly, but we're going to change that. But anyway, that's how the target was written here. You see, let me explain. Time is not linear in consciousness. It's more like what they say in physics is it's every event that happens in physics is a probability smear. It's like you have something on ink on your thumb and you smear it on a piece of paper. That smear is a probability representation. So every event is not a distinct thing that happens at a moment in time. According to physics, these things happen with a probabilistic capability of manifesting. And it's a smear. The probability smears it over time, so you don't know exactly when anything is going to happen. So what matters most is the events and the progression of intensity. So the sessions point to markers in the sand. Now those are events like explosions and troop deployments and information exposures, clashes, regardless of whether the mainstream timeline reports them in December, January, or February. So the remote viewing doesn't really look at December, January, and February. It looks for these events that sort of cover the essence of what's being sought after, even if it happens months later. So the dates are approximate. What really matters is the sequence. That's the key. Now let me explain it a little bit better so that you have a better understanding of time as it relates to remote viewing, so that you'll understand what these remote viewing sessions are. This is for the post-election U.S. military engagement, which, by the way, according to our data and according to the news that you're seeing, it is going to happen big time. So you need to look at these sessions. Okay? Now, people often look at our projects and say, well, that didn't happen in December. Okay, so did it happen in January? Well, what was the date? And if it wasn't it, they missed the thing. Okay, so that's what we're addressing, people thinking things like that. So you might call events that occur like a quantum smear or a probability wave, but the viewers themselves are drawn to these events that satisfy the target intent. We wanted to see, is the military going to be engaged domestically after the election? That's what we wanted to see. It's the remote viewer's consciousness is not drawn to the dates, the specific dates. So the dates in our target, which is December, January, and February, are best thought of as general markers. They are approximations that help us sample the timeline. But the important part is the progression of the events. And so, which is unrest, and then escalation, and then crackdown. So the events are the markers in the sand, and the sessions give us clear markers. Explosions, troop movements, deployments, arrests, exposures, and clashes. Whether they show up in late December, January, February, or a few weeks or even months off in either direction, earlier or later. But the point is not the calendar precision. The point is the sequence, the direction of history as it unfolds. So already, this is September 2025. As of already, we have troops that have been deployed in Washington, D.C., big time. Los Angeles, big time. And now they're heading towards Memphis and Chicago. And we see those markers appearing in the news right in front of us. Now, the sessions I'm going to describe to you now, they were done in October and published in November 2024. They're very accurate in terms of the trajectory of events that the United States seems to be on. Some of the events have already started happening, and these events may be related to the tensions within the United States itself. However, some may be the result of, to be quite honest, foreign intervention within the U.S. borders themselves. So it's clear that the Farsight project for U.S. domestic military engagement was an absolutely unambiguous hit. We got it, folks. And you all have to watch it on FarsightPrime.com. All 4 complete sessions. I'm going to be summarizing the basic stuff, but you got to see it for yourself, including all the sketches and everything. So let's go through the sessions one at a time to see how we can summarize the results. But remember, the months December, January, and February are best thought of as stages, or what we might call epochs. Epochs, E-P-O-C-H-S, which are not literal calendar months, but epochs. Now, Google AI describes an epoch as a period of time characterized by particular features, events, and developments. But the specific meaning of epoch depends on the context. So that's how you really should look at dates. So in our future targets, we're thinking that we're going to start writing them not with dates, but epochs. So what's the first thing that happens? What's the second thing that happens? What's the third thing that happens in Epoch 1, Epoch 2, Epoch 3? So you get the idea of major event type things that are sort of unique in their characteristics being first in the sequence, and then second in the sequence, and third in the sequence, rather than actual specific dates, because the dates themselves really don't work with remote viewing, but epochs do work if you think of it in terms of characterizations. Okay, so now let's dive in, and hope you're sitting down. Let's start with Aziz's session. Aziz Brown, my son. So the thing started, let's talk about with Epoch 1, okay? And that would be sort of, we were stating that as December, but really it's the first stage. He saw explosive events in cities, mushroom cloud-like imagery. And then later on, in Epoch 2, there was underground bunkers, very stern leaders, and projectile impacts. Epoch 3 was tech-driven puppetry warfare, remote command centers directing strikes. Maybe you can think of a lot of things like drone warfare, but that type of thing, puppeting stuff. Okay, now Aziz, his data emphasized bureaucratic controlled progression of military activity. Let me repeat that. Aziz's session, meaning he has his own personality, and he picked up what he thought was important. And he picked up the idea of bureaucratic controlled progression of military activity that was orchestrated from underground command centers. Everybody got that? So really, you're talking about bureaucratic controlled progression, increasing, escalating as time went on, but it was all orchestrated from underground command centers. Now let's go over to Intysam's session, okay? Sort of her highlights were sort of Epoch 1. She found there was chanting crowds, leaders that were arguing indoors. Epoch 2, draft imagery, urban chaos, aerial energetics. Okay. Epoch 3, there was full battlefield scenes, rubble. She had the metaphor of Nagasaki bomb. So she thought, really major stuff, major destruction. So what Intysam saw in her session through these 3 epochs was a step-by-step escalation from unrest, which I think everyone should be able to say that epoch has already passed. Or it's not passed, it's like we're in that page, that we're in that epoch now. Followed by forced mobilization, and if you're looking at the news, that's what's gearing up right now. Okay? And then finally open warfare, and that hasn't happened yet. Okay? But we clearly see unrest, forced mobilization, open warfare. And the elements of an unrest are ideological, also the ICE raids. You have the raid to rally, to grab people and deport them and stuff like that. All of that is sort of coming together. And there's also going to be tremendous economic elements associated with that, which I'm not going into the economic elements today, but that's going to be sort of mixed in with this. So let's go now to Shante's session. Epoch 1. She basically saw protests, arrests, and detentions. That was Epoch 1. And that pretty much matches what we've seen so far. We've seen arrests, protests, lots of protests, and we get detentions, people being captured and taken away. Epoch 2. She gets public shame, paranoia, release of hidden information. Think of Epstein file stuff, JFK assassination stuff. So there's public shame, paranoia, people saying, are they next? And then in Epoch 3, Shante saw the reputation collapses, people's reputations. Whose reputation? Are we talking about maybe the Epstein files coming out? I mean, what's happening? Scapegoating, people pointing fingers. It wasn't me. And institutional breakdown. Do you see how each person has sort of their own personality when they go into this stuff, and they sort of pick up things that they particularly are attracted to or interested in? And that's why it's so good to have multiple remote viewers with these things, because they pick up different types of things, but all related, and then you get a better picture, a fuller picture of what's going on. So what Shante, her session, reveals is information war dimension. It's right. It's the information war dimension. You get exposure of manipulative networks. Manipulative. That's how I started out this spotlight. Manipulative networks. Everyone's having their own conclusions and trying to lead the masses. You're not getting objective anything in the news. So you have the exposure of manipulative networks driving unrest in parallel to physical clashes. So you get these, and people are talking about trying to control social media now, But really, if you're going to control social media, you got to control the news networks as well, because the news networks are just as guilty as any social media. There's really no difference between the news networks and social media. They're all acting the same. So you get this information war dimension that Shante focuses on, and the exposure of manipulative networks driving unrest in parallel to physical clashes. Okay, now let's go to Yeme's session. Yeme, Epoch 1. She saw explosions, tunnel imagery, hazardous energetics. Epoch 2. She saw chemical fallout, disoriented civilians, underground device detonation. And in Epoch 3, you had military crackdowns, programmed soldiers storming civilians, children harmed. And I think if you look at the news, how it's progressing, you can see that stuff starting right now. Now, I was looking at somebody's comment in one of our videos saying, oh my gosh, Courtney's so doom and gloom and Farsight's so doom and gloom. No, we're not doom and gloom. We're just reporting. Well, remember, all of our sessions are done totally blind, and they're analyzed by AI. So you can't say that we're doom and gloom. We're just reporting it as it is. Let us say we were doing this right before World War II. Would you be saying, oh gosh, they're so doom and gloom, thinking that there's going to be a war coming out and stuff like that? Or are they just telling it what it is? I mean, sometimes bad stuff happens, and you just have to be objective about it and say what the bad stuff is. We're not doom and gloom. It's not like we're trying to cause anything. Remember, our data are collected blind. And we get our data analyzed objectively by AI. So it's not doom and gloom. We're not projecting anything. This is just what we get. Blind conducted data. Objectively analyzed data. You're not getting that from anywhere else. So, again, for Epoch 1 in Yeme, explosions, tunnel imagery, hazardous energetics. Epoch 2, chemical fallout, disoriented civilians, underground device detonation. And Epoch 3, military crackdowns, programmed soldiers storming civilians and children harmed. Now, the basic essence of Yeme is she emphasizes civilian vulnerability. People caught between chemical events and military enforcement. And I think you're starting to see some of that now, and it's clearly gearing up. And for those of you who are not watching the news, the assassination of Charlie Kirk was a strong message to the conservative side that, they have a potent opposition now. And the liberal side, which used to be unarmed, is no longer unarmed. And so the two sides are more polarized than ever. And neither side looks like it's even remotely thinking of backing down. So it's a big issue. It's a really, really big issue. So let's try to synthesize this or pull these things together. Looking at all four viewers together. Epoch 1 seems to have unrest, protests, and the very first explosions and arrests. We've been seeing that. So that doesn't have to be something that we're waiting for. It's ongoing right now. We're seeing that type of thing happen big time on the news. Actually, you may not be seeing everything on the news because a lot of it is suppressed. But you can get a lot of it on alternate news sources. And if you go to YouTube, one of the independent people that seems to be showing a lot of the stuff that's going on, he's got a more pro-Trump orientation, but he nonetheless picks up a lot of feeds and a lot of news of showing things that actually is going on that you don't see, is someone called Cash Jordan. C-H-A-S Jordan, and he captures a lot of video footage of things that's going on in all the different cities, of all the disruptions that are going on, and I'm not saying I agree with his political views or orientation, but he does capture a lot of videos, and that's video interest. It's pretty interesting to see these types of things that are not being reported in the mainstream. For example, Donald Trump is talking about, well, he already sent troops into Los Angeles, and you really don't get any evidence from the mainstream in Los Angeles of why that happened. But, you know, with a lot of the video footage that's coming out with people like Cash Jordan, you actually see it. You actually see the video footage, and a lot of stuff was going on. And a lot of mainstream, you know, wealthy people's houses are just, you know, it's just becoming unsafe. And with regard to Chicago and New York and D.C., you get a lot of the footage that you get to see and say, wow, that's amazing. And in Chicago and D.C. and other places, the mayors typically say, there's no problem, we're handling everything by ourselves. But when you see the actual footage, you say, wow, things are really sort of getting out of hand. And then you have the president going into, already he's gone into Los Angeles, and already he's gone into Washington, D.C. with National Guard. And now he's planning on going into Chicago and Memphis. And I'm sure you're going to get a whole bunch of other cities, and there's going to be a lot of kickback. There's going to be a lot of people objecting to all of that. Now, I'm not siding in favor of Trump doing that or against Trump doing that. I'm not coming out on either side. I'm just reporting, in terms of the remote viewing, those types of clashes are happening. And you're not getting it equally reported of why it's happening or what's happening with it. So you're not getting anything objective in it. So this is as close as you can get to an objective discussion of what's actually going on, unless you get these, you know, offbeat news type people that are posting feeds on YouTube or Instagram or things like that. So the epoch one, in terms of the overall stuff, and please remember what I just said. I never have a bias in terms of one side or the other. I try to just stick with what the remote viewing is, but I try to give illustrations of how these results actually fit with things you can find in the news. Okay. Anyway, so the epoch one, across all 4 remote viewers, you get unrest, protests, first explosions, and arrests. Okay. Now, epoch 2, across all 4 remote viewers, you get escalation, drafts, information releases, chemical, energetic fallout. It escalates. And that's what we're really in right now. We're in that escalation stage. And then epoch 3, chaos, military crackdowns, institutional collapse. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing. So this is the critical thing that you need to get. All viewers, each one of the viewers, described a sequence. Let me repeat that. Each one of the viewers described a sequence. They did not know anything about the target. They did not know anything about the nature of the project. They did not know anything, but each one saw a sequence as you went from epoch 1 to epoch 2, epoch 3. That's extraordinary. None of them had a deviation. They all had an escalation across the epochs, 1, 2, and 3. This is the real value of the sessions, the unfolding path of events. Again, the dates are approximations, like markers on a blurred timeline. The important thing is not whether an explosion is on December 15th or January 3rd, but that such an event happens in the progression of unrest, followed by escalation, followed by crackdown. That's what we're seeing. Unrest, escalation, and crackdown. All right, now, let's sort of pull some things together. Let me check the time. How am I doing? We're doing great. Remember that stress has a probabilistic nature. When things are stressed out, when things are really messed up, everything, all events, that when you really look at them, they're all probabilistic. So remote viewing always deals with probability streams, not clock time. Please remember that. The closer we get, the more probability collapses into fixed events. The closer we get to the events, the more the probability collapses. What we see here are clear markers in the probability timeline. Explosions, troops, arrests, exposures, and breakdowns. So let's tie this to what we're seeing. Troops already deployed in Washington, LA, and now they're moving to Memphis and Chicago. We're already entering the trajectory described by these sessions. And our role at Farsight is not to fix the calendar, but to show the patterns unfolding so that you can see them. So that when the events actually happen, you recognize them for what they are. Does everyone get that? Let me repeat that, because that's what Farsight's supposed to be doing. Our role is not to fix the calendar. We're not supposed to make the events like not happen, to go away or anything like that. Our role is to show the patterns unfolding, both in the sessions and then help you see the connection with the actual history that's developing in real time. The events, so that when the events actually do come, you can recognize them for what they are. You can say, oh yeah, I know what this is all about. I saw the remote viewing sessions. So if I sort of were to give you some basic take-home messages, like what did you get from listening to Courtney's Spotlight today? The calendar is approximate. The sequence of events is the real story. And to think of dates as markers in the sand, blurred at the edges, but clear in progression. And remote viewing captures what happens, not the exact day it shows up on the clock, but what happens, the event itself. So the key is the escalation path of unrest, followed by escalation, followed by crackdown. Regardless of whether it says December, January, February, or any month, it's epoch 1, epoch 2, epoch 3. The dates in remote viewing are always probability smears. The markers, the actual events, those are the things that matter. Okay, now what I want to sort of touch base with right now is emphasize that these deep news transcripts, which actually are finished, will be linked in the vault in a couple days. You can go through them. However, right now, you can go to farsightprime.com and go to the Deep News series, and then go to the 2024. We separate them by year. We started in 2023, then 2024, and now we're in 2025. So go to the 2024 of the Deep News and look for U.S. military, domestic U.S. military engagement, and those 4 sessions that I just talked about. And look at them and see the remote viewers under totally blind conditions describing these events. Remember, when they describe them on video, they don't know what they're describing. They're just describing what they're seeing. And watch it for yourself and say, holy mackerel, are you serious? And you see that each viewer is picking up that exact same sequence: unrest, escalation, crackdown. Everybody's seeing that same thing. And they weren't communicating with one another during the time, so how could they all be seeing the same thing unless it was actually happening? They weren't talking about it and saying, okay, what are we going to do? Let's come to let's have a joint thing of what we're going to do with our sessions. No. None of that happened. They weren't communicating about the project at all among themselves. They did it totally under blind conditions, and they all come up the same epic sequence: unrest, escalation, the escalation you're seeing happening now, and then crackdown. So I thought that this was the appropriate time to do this, especially when people are particularly sensitive to unrest. because of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So I just said, let's not push this down to something that's going to be something we'll do in a month or two. We'll get the troop movements already in L.A. and Washington, D.C., and now they're headed to Memphis and Chicago, and there's more going to happen. And now after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I'm sure you're going to see more escalation in terms of protests, unrest, and governmental response. It's going to build. And then in addition to all that, you have the stuff going on in the world. Russia is clearly escalating what's going on in Ukraine. They want to end this and end it quickly. Europe is not seeing Russian side of whatever is going on, and they're doubling down. And they're basically saying, we have to keep fighting this and teach the Russians a lesson. So the Europeans are going to be saying, we'd rather have this fought in Ukraine, which is already a destroyed country, than have it escalate and go into other countries like Poland and Germany and France. So they're going to be throwing more stuff into Ukraine. That's going to cause Russia to sort of, double down there. And Russia has already started to send kamikaze drones into Poland. And that's it's like major. So if you're not connecting the dots, you should be. And so, we're going to have another escalating battle between Israel and Iran. That seems a foregone conclusion. Israel is going to keep on doing this, and the United States is going to have to support Israel, or Israel will probably lose. That's what the story is. Israel probably cannot survive if you have a situation in which the United States doesn't support. If the United States did not support Israel, and if Israel and Iran had just kept battling away, the state of Israel probably would have ended in the last battle they had with Iran. The reason is Israel uses U.S. weapons, which are really high quality, but really expensive, and they run out of them fast. Iran has a different strategy of making really good weapons, but that are inexpensive to make, and they have zillions of them, So Iran could have just kept on pounding away at Israel, and Israel's defense, the so-called Iron Dome, would have simply collapsed, and Iran would have just kept on pounding and pounding and pounding. But, that whole period, that whole war stopped. But it didn't stop because it came to a conclusion. It stopped because people were pausing to rearm. And again, Israel is rearming with expensive and not too many U.S. weapons, and Iran is rearming with cheap, inexpensive weapons that they can just keep doing. And Iran really changed the nature of the warfare, because typically in warfare you get troops going in and colliding. That way you need things like tanks and personnel carriers and things like that. Iran doesn't need any of that. It just needs cheap missiles that they send over in thousands. And they don't need any tanks, they don't need any ground troops, and nothing. So Israel's looking at Iran and saying, we never would have had, this is what Israel's saying, we never would have had problems with Lebanon or Gaza or Syria had Iran not been arming those people. So we can't stop this until we break up Iran, and that's the goal. They want to do to Iran what was already done to Syria, where the country is broken up. Now, Iran is not stupid. They know this. So when the battle resumes, Iran is fully expecting, they're probably expecting to finish it at that point, which is to try to end the state of Israel. Now, the U.S. knows this as well. The U.S. is not stupid. So the only way Israel will be able to survive is if the U.S. fully backs it in every possible means. And if Israel actually gets to the point where the U.S. is no longer supporting it, it will collapse, and that would force Israel to face the existential question of whether it would use actual nuclear weapons to defend itself. And that would be literally nuking Iran. So what does Israel really want out of all this? They definitely want the U.S. to get involved, and because they can't do it by themselves, and they want the breakup of Iran. They don't want the complete destruction of the country. They want the country itself to break up into pieces the way Syria broke up into pieces, so that it's no longer a threat as it's perceived. So that's what the goal is from Israeli side of point of view. Iran, of course, knows this, so they're going to be fighting to keep themselves together. Now, the real question is, how is Russia and China going to be involved with that, because they do not want Iran to break up into pieces for a whole bunch of reasons. So Russia and China are going to be acting to keep Iran together. So the only thing that we really can see is that this type of international conflict is going to happen. We don't know how it's going to be resolved. I hope I've explained the basic nature of the views of the combatants, but we don't know how it's going to be resolved. So we have the Middle East thing going on, but we also have the Ukraine thing going on. If I was running China, when this stuff happens, I would not miss the opportunity to take Taiwan, because the U.S. will be totally occupied with the imminent collapse of Ukraine or the expansion of the war into Western Europe, the battle between Israel and Iran, and then the U.S. is not going to be able to do anything. We're going to be totally occupied with everything else. And then that would be the moment that China would most likely try to take Taiwan. So those are the ingredients that I'm sort of looking at, which reflects on the sessions that we just did for the domestic military engagement in the United States. All that turmoil internationally will come back into the United States. Iran, in fact, they definitely have sleeper cells in the United States, as does Al-Qaeda and so on. When the U.S. border was opened up for 4 years during the Biden and Harris administration, guaranteed enemies of the United States used that moment to send in people, and they're sleepers right now. They're not doing anything. They're lying low. And absolutely unambiguously, they have heavy weapons, missiles. Because if you could bring in the drugs that the cartels bring in, which is like 18-wheeler type stuff, then you could definitely bring in weapons as well. So during that 4 years, you can assume that the cartels, and not just the cartels, but that the opponents of the United States brought in people and weapons to do that. At the same time, you have the United States planning to militarily engage in Venezuela and possibly Mexico. Now, what you're looking at there is an extension of military might throughout the world from many sources, troubles, and then economic problems in the United States combined with, polarized politics that exist in the United States anyway. So if you look at these remote viewing results and then look at the sort of world stage that's happening right now, this was not predictable in October 2024. But these sessions make total sense given the outline of what I've just described. So if I were to look at these sessions and the news today, I would say it looks like the major war events are not going to end. They're not going to be fixed. There's not going to be a negotiated solution between Israel and Iran. There's not going to be an easy negotiated solution, make friends with Ukraine and Russia. There's not going to be an easy tamping down of all of the types of stuff, even in the United States domestically after the assassination of Charlie Kirk and other stuff that's going on. That stuff isn't just going to go away. So these remote viewing sessions in the context of the news make total sense, and you really need to watch them at FARSIGHT'Prime.com. That's the message for today. This is your future, and at this point, given what we see, those sessions look like they are a total hit. Spot on. So if you want to know what's coming, the best way to take a look at what's coming, probabilistically, but at this point it looks like with a high level of probability, are those sessions at FARSIGHTPrime.com. Anyway, I want to ask you also to remember a couple things. If you subscribe to FARSIGHTPrime.com, you get your money's worth. You get a ton of stuff. If you look at the vault on farsight.org, you get an ability to direct all of your attention on FARSIGHTPrime.com to know what you're looking for and to get what you want. If you sign up for the newsletter on farsight.org, the free newsletter, you get the ability to hear some of our major announcements. We never send out spam, and we never give our subscriber list to anybody else for any purpose whatsoever, period. If you subscribe to Farsight Prime on Twitter or X, you get to see a lot of our shorts. And so that's another really great thing if you can do it. Follow us on X. And we have many more things that are coming. I haven't told you everything that's coming, but if everything comes out the way it is with regard to what we're doing behind the scenes, by the end of this year, Farsight is the only place you really want to. You actually want to keep looking at the news, but Farsight is the only place you really want to make sure you never miss, because this is what we're heading towards now. Now that the vault is done and we can systematically go through all of our sessions, every single word that's ever spoken in the sessions, all collected totally blind. Now we can talk really authoritatively about everything. All right, everybody. So let me check the time, and it's 8 o'clock. So we've actually just wrapped up the entire time, and it looks like we have a good turnout today. And I'm going to be editing the spotlight tonight, and we're going to be taking down this live stream version and putting up the recorded version. The camera that you're watching me on right now is also recording this, and then we get really good audio, really great mics and everything. We get that, so you don't go through any type of YouTube compression or anything. So it's the permanent version goes up later on tonight or maybe early tomorrow morning. But anyway, so that's great. The other thing is next week we're going to have a release, but it's not going to be a live stream. It's going to be a pre-recorded, because something else is going on next weekend that we have to address. So you're going to get something next weekend, but you're going to have to get it on Farsight's YouTube channel and on FARSIGHTPrime.com on Sunday, okay? So Sunday at the same time, everything's the same, except that it will be pre-recorded, and I'll help explain what's going on the following week when the live streams come back. It's still going to be a spotlight next week on Sunday, and at the same time, but and you'll still get it on YouTube on the same time, but it's going to be pre-recorded so that we can get this stuff done that we're doing at the same time. All right, everybody, and I will see you next week on the pre-recorded spotlight. That's going to be 7 o'clock Eastern time next Sunday, and live stream the week after that as normal. All right, everybody, you'll take care, stay safe, and please go to FARSIGHTPrime.com and watch those sessions. All right, everybody, talk to you later. Bye now.